Welcome to this episode of the Crypto Fatcat and the Crypto Skeptic. Jonathan, Crypto Fatcat, what is happening in the wild and wonderful world of crypto this week?
Well, it is just volatility all over the place as the crypto world readies for the possibility of an announcement that a Bitcoin ETF, and actually several Bitcoin ETFs, would indeed be approved by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States of America. Today, as we're recording on Wednesday, January 3rd, there was a rumor posted by one crypto news site only saying that the ETF was not going to get approved, and it sent the market spiraling into a big death spiral. Well, death is a little strong, but into a spiral all the same. Bitcoin down 5% on the day after having jumped to, I think it's all-time high. Well, not it's a high for the last 18 months or so yesterday on anticipation of the ETFs being approved. Fidelity announced what their rates were going to be on the ETF. Like more and more things seem to be happening, and now what we're seeing is just a very strong pullback as people are afraid that it's not going to be approved, at least this time around.
God, it makes you wonder, where are these rumors coming from? Who's promoting
I
them?
know. I mean, it could be someone who's like just trying to buy a Bitcoin a little bit cheaper, going into the ETF as they're very sure it's going to happen, or maybe not. I mean, that's my best guess, is that it's mostly someone trying to get some last minute cheap sub $45,000 Bitcoin is my best guess. We should know pretty soon. January 10th is the deadline for the SEC to announce if they're rejecting or accepting these. There's a lot of belief that we'll know by Friday, one way or the other, which would be January 5th.
Okay, so what's the current price? What's the current market cap?
Well, I'm really glad you asked, Sean. And the answer, of course, the current price of Bitcoin, $43,000, the current market cap, just a touch below $850 billion. The overall crypto market cap, pretty darn healthy at $1.7 trillion, as we're just entering into what should be the beginning of a nice bull market. What with the halving coming up in the next few months, the ETFs happening either very soon or at least in the somewhat future, and the rest of all the infrastructure starting to be built around crypto. It's looking very good. But we're at 1.7 trillion currently for crypto.
Okay, so let's talk for a moment about if the ETF is approved and it does move forward. What are you anticipating happens as a result of that?
I think Bitcoin will jump past 50,000 in the short term. There'll be a lot of excitement. People will be coming in who didn't even know that they were interested in buying this. They're going to say, like, "Whoa, I better get in quickly. I see something happening here." So I think Bitcoin will have an immediate jump, lots of excitement, lots of froth. But then it's going to take the ETF probably about 4 to 5 weeks before they would actually be launched into the wild. And my guess is then we would see a pullback on the price, maybe back to where we are now, even as people start to think like, isn't it already priced in? Weren't we pretty sure it was going to happen? So I would think we're going to jump to 50K and then fall back to, 44, 43, 45, something like that, kind of where we are now. And then the question is really, when the ETF debuts, how big is it going to be? Or the multiple ETFs, the combined financial power of all the ETFs. The first few days, I think, are going to be really instructive for where the Bitcoin price goes in the short
And
term.
what's the potential ranges that you're thinking about or that you are hearing about at this stage?
I mean, you're going to get all sorts of ranges from people in this industry. A lot of them are very high and probably irresponsibly so. I hear things as high as $100,000 before the halving. The halving would generally be taking place like early April, something like that. That feels extremely unlikely to me. I would not hate it. It would be beneficial to me, but very unlikely for Bitcoin to more than double in this short period of time just off the ETF news. What we're going to find out, though, pretty quickly, though, is just how big an appetite there really is for this type of product. And if the appetite is big, 100,000 isn't insane. To me, the bigger question is not $100,000, but will we see an all-time high before the halving, which would be 70,000? I don't think 70,000 is impossible if there's a lot more interest than I'm sort of expecting. I think if we get big interest, I think that will push the price up. We'll start to see articles about it. More people get excited. There'll be a FOMO going on, and bam, the bear market will really be kicked off for reals. Otherwise, I think most likely is we're not going to see anything like that. We're going to see this just much more chill. Yeah. We were at 50,000 and then we dropped back to 45 and it's been launched. It was pretty good. It moves up to 47,000 and then just a slow, chill movements, over the course of the year and eventually hits an all-time high, later on. But the ranges are as high as 100,000 and as low as I would say about 50,000, like from observers and pundits.
Okay. And so just how has it worked in the past with the Bitcoin halving? So you mentioned that's coming up in April. So what's the historical price action that's happened in the lead up, the few months before it, and then the few months after it?
A few months before it, you start to see the Bitcoin price start to move positively. And that continues with the few months after it, always leading to, so far, this has only happened a few times, but always leading to 6 to 8 months later, Bitcoin hitting its new all-time high. So that's happened every time. And there's strong belief that'll happen yet again. Hopefully that's true. That would be very exciting. There's no reason to think it isn't going to happen except, being a cynic or a person who brings everybody down. But with all the reasons, the fact that Bitcoin hit 70,000 once, and now there's so many more reasons to be interested and excited about it. I'm very bullish on it over the longer haul. Over the shorter haul, we should really start to see though a relatively steady upward movement. This is a volatile asset. You're still going to see big drops throughout, but ultimately, where if you zoom out a bit, you're going to see the line going this way.
Okay, so if it follows its historical price action, then we'd look to see all-time highs in next October or this
October, November, December, January, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay. I know that I am the crypto skeptic, and I really do question the long-term value of even the digital gold that is known as Bitcoin. However, in the short term, I think I actually might be more bullish than you. I have the experience of playing around with, because of our discussions, some of these online sites like Kraken or Binance or Coinbase, where I've tried to open an account and put a few $100s into one of these, into Bitcoin actually. And it is just, for someone like me, I found it extremely difficult to do. My bank didn't want to transfer money to them. And then I had to, different options in order to do it. And the option that I chose, I felt really unsettled and uneasy with. I had to put in my bank password to do a bank transfer. I feel like the process then of having it on an exchange and learning about what happened with FTX, where everybody who had the money on the exchanges, or a lot of people lost their money, and other exchanges have had issues too. So then it was like, you need to put things into cold storage. So the whole process then of ordering one of these special USB sticks that whatever costs a couple $100 that then you then have to set up. And then you have this passcode, but you can't put it on your email, or you can't take a picture of it. You have to write it down and put it somewhere safe. But, where I live, there isn't safe deposit boxes, and it's only a small sum of money anyway. But then that whole process of I remember, I wrote these words down and I put them somewhere and I forgot where I put them. Wasn't able to find that again. I mean, it was just nuts. And then to think that any potential consumers of this product have to go through that, which means that they have to be a true believer. And now, if you can just have a Fidelity account, which is, one of the biggest retirement savings account in the US, and you could just click an option for putting some money into Bitcoin, for example, I think that the demand is going to jump way up. Even if the majority of people aren't interested in it, the people who are interested, who are just sort of looking on the sidelines and maybe even skeptical about it, but hey, why not put a 1% or 0.5% of my money into Bitcoin? That's going to add up. Or if you have the financial advisors who've been sitting on the sideline who are now going to say to some of their clients, hey, maybe you put 5% of your assets into this digital gold. So you've got a little piece of that action in case there's some type of currency devaluation going forward. So I think that it's going to potentially, have not just be a bump up to 50,000, But I would say within 6 months that surely, given the price that it's up 3 times in the last 12 months, isn't it? Weren't we at $15,000 just going back less than a year ago? And now we're at 45,000.
Yeah, maybe a little more than a year ago, but yeah, sure, right around
So
there.
if that's the case, then if all of a sudden there's these ETFs that allow you to buy Bitcoin, then how can it be that the price of Bitcoin doesn't double at least?
Wow. Look at you. So let me ask you this. As an investor, as someone who thinks about this stuff, who knows a lot about the cryptocurrency world now, are you interested in buying Bitcoin via ETF when it does become available? Let's say it becomes available in mid-February. Is that something you would click on and say, yes, I want to move some money into that, or not?
I would be interested in it as a short-term speculation.
Okay.
I have real concerns about it as far as a long-term, that potentially you could lose all your money. But as a short-term speculation, I would be extremely interested in it and putting an amount in that I feel like I'm comfortable with this amount. If I lose the money or if it's just really volatile, where it's up really high and down really low and, just an amount to play with, let's say.
Mm-hmm. So you're just going to try and outthink the market, basically, like time the market well, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, it's not. I don't feel like I'm outthinking the market because if I was outthinking the market, I would have done this a lot earlier.
Yeah, fair.
It's more that just okay. There seems to be this tsunami of money that now has the possibility to enter into the crypto market in a way that has dramatically less friction as compared to what was going on before. And so it's just making a bet that that's going to mean in the short term that the price is going to go up. And I don't just mean the short term of the week or the month or the 2 months after the ETF is approved, but I mean over the course of the next, 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I probably am going to be selling in that time, a fair amount of my stuff in that time period too, 12 to 24 months from now. But with different reasons than you have, admittedly. But, I do believe in these things as long-term assets for sure. But I also want to make sure I take profit. And I also, would love it if I could sell near the top and then buy back in later near the bottom and so on and so forth. I don't want to give myself chances to do all of that. But from a time frame point of view, though, we're kind of on the same page here.
So I want to talk to you about that. So you it is shocking. You have a plan. You've been through these highs and these lows. You've been through 2 bull markets and 2 bear markets, right?
Yes,
so the first one, it was like that crazy bull market that where it went up to $20,000, and it really seemed insane at the time because you'd been talking to me about Bitcoin prior to that, and it was like sub $1,000 and just over $1,000, and it was this niche, crazy digital currency that in its early days we all heard the stories. People were buying pizzas with it, and spending whatever a Bitcoin or a couple of Bitcoins on one pizza. And here it is. It's like that silly little digital coin is worth 20 grand. It's nuts. And I remember hearing somebody. I was at a writer's workshop actually, and there was someone there he looked like the type of guy who's a heavy conspiracy theorist, he wasn't wearing the tinfoil hat, but you could see the mark on his hair from where he'd been wearing it earlier that day. And he says, I think everybody should be getting into Bitcoin. And this is when the bull market's happening. And Bitcoin at that point, I think was around $8,000. And I remember saying to the group, yes, it has gone up a tremendous amount. Here we are at $8,000, but you have to keep in mind that it could also really go down dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it popped up to 20 grand and then it did go down dramatically, where I felt, justified in my opinions. But had you bought Bitcoin at $8,000 back then, well, you'd be sitting on a massive profit. That guy looks like a genius at this point,
Yeah.
So you've been through that bull market. You've been through the second bull market where it went up to what, $70,000?
Yeah, 69.9.
Okay, so what are your learnings that you've taken from those 2 previous bull markets as we potentially head into this next one in a more intensive way that will change your behavior as compared to the last 2?
So the first time around, I didn't even understand the market cycles at all. So I was just shocked it went up and shocked it went down, and every day was a surprise. I was like, a newborn deer trying to figure out how to walk. I had no idea what was going on. So there's no lesson to be taken from that except that I learned eventually that this was the crypto market cycle. So then the second time it happened, I was prepared for it, meaning emotionally. I wasn't surprised that I actually started buying crypto up. I already had a fair amount, but I started buying again in the summer of 2020, which would equate to about the summer of 2024. So, but when Bitcoin was at $10,000 and Ethereum was at 400, in anticipation of the coming bull market, which then did happen, I felt very confident about it. I started telling friends, "This is the time to buy if you want to buy." I did have one. I told you. I told another friend who listened to me and sunk an irresponsible amount of money into it, quite frankly, but it worked out very well for all of us. What I learned from that one was that, well, I believe that there was going to be what's called a super cycle, where like we weren't going to exit this 4-year cycle, and that did not happen. And so I held everything. So I sold a tiny bit, but I mostly held on to everything. And that was the only thing painful about the last 4 years for me, was that I had an opportunity to cash out a lot of money and didn't. But things going down was fine with me, because I always felt confident it was coming back. And I'm always thinking in terms of 10 years from now, kind of a thing. What do I care what it's worth today? I care what it's worth in 2030. So from the first to the second, I learned to be emotionally fine with the volatility, and it really worked for me. And I had no problem with the last 4 years of volatility, and that served me well. What I learned from the second bull market was, don't be so fucking smart that you think you know how things are going to go. Take profits at times. Make sure you pay yourself, because as a guy who there's a popular crypto influencer named Lark Davis who says, if you don't take markets, the market will take them for you. You don't take profit, the market will take it for you. And I think that's right on. And that's what happened last time. I didn't take the profit. The market took it for me. They got to enjoy it. I didn't. That's fine. I mean, I did really well, but I could have done a lot better. And this time I've been planning now for the last few months around my exit. I'm thinking about my exit. How much do I want to sell? What percentage of the things do I want to sell? What prices am I automatically triggered to sell a certain percentage of things at? What's my timeline on selling? Like, I'm really thinking about all that. And then with the notion that I might come back into the market having sold some a year or two later, if indeed we do continue on these 4-year cycles like we have been, we go into yet another bear market, which I believe will happen. But I acknowledge I don't know this. So I'm going to hold some, and I'm going to sell a big chunk, and I hope to be in one of those spots where almost no matter what happens, I'll be happy. I can be like, it crashes, I'm like, great, I sold a bunch, I can take some of that money, buy back all those assets, still have a bunch of money left over. Or it just keeps going up, and I'll be like, cool, I kept a bunch of assets, I get to profit off it, and I made sure that nothing bad could happen to me, basically, by cashing out. So that was the big lesson for me from the second to the third one.
Okay, so critical question. What is your Bitcoin sell price?
Well, it's mostly around calendar rather than price. But if Bitcoin hits $200,000, I am going to automatically sell a chunk of Bitcoin right away. Like, I'm not going to wait. It's like an automatic must sell kind of situation, because it just feels irresponsible not to, quite frankly. So that's like and conversely, Ethereum hitting 20,000 is the same thing, where not necessarily I'm going to sell all of it. It depends on where we are in the market cycle as well. It's possible, like you're saying, with these ETFs, things could happen bigger and faster than I'm anticipating. So it's not completely impossible. By the end of the year, we'll have a $200,000 Bitcoin because of that. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's not impossible. And so I will sell some, but I won't go nuts, because I think 2025 is going to be better than 2024 as of right now. And I'm planning based on that. But 200,000, I have to sell some no matter what. That's just the deal. I don't get to complain about it.
And what's the story that you tell yourself? How do you work out the psychology of that? If Bitcoin then continues, and then 6 months later, a year later, it's at 300,000, 350. Like,
Yeah.
How do you make yourself feel okay about taking those profits off the table at 200K?
I plan on drying my tears in $100 bills, much like Woody Harrelson did in Decent Proposal. Also, like, I'm not going to sell. The thing is this. So I have a certain amount I'm planning on selling. Let's say of my Bitcoin pool that I own, right? So I'm planning on selling something like 70% of it, give or take, right? But I'm not going to sell all of it at 200,000 if we hit 200,000 quickly. I might sell a fifth of it at 200,000. So my plan is to actually, much the way people dollar cost average into these assets, my plan is mostly to dollar cost average out of these assets by making monthly sales. So that way I don't try and outsmart the market. I don't say to myself, oh, this is as high as it's get. I better sell the rest right now. I'm going to sell some now. And next month, if it's higher, great, I'll sell more. If it's lower, I'll probably sell more than two. And it'll average out and it'll hopefully be a really good number overall. And those $100 bills, which I'm also probably going to use to heat myself by lighting them on fire if it gets too cold, they make a good bedfellow. So, if so be it, if I could have been even richer, so be it. That's okay.
Okay. I wonder what the percentage of people in the market is who've been in like longer term, medium term now, so who've been through a cycle as compared to the last bull market where you had a lot of new people with all of this stimulus money, supposedly. Like people were throwing money into investments in the stock market and in crypto in that 2020, 2021 bull market. So what was the percentage of new investors in there who then bailed basically, and the market crashed down? And what is it now? And how might that affect whether this cycle is a little different? I guess I wonder, are there a lot of guys like you who've been around now for a couple of cycles who are planning to be
For
more
sure.
diligent about selling crypto when it reaches a certain mark,
I'm sure there are, but as you were talking about earlier, the ETF is going to open up this market to people who previously had no way of getting in before, right? And then my belief is that will compound with new all-time high prices, big headlines about it, lots of talk about crypto and Bitcoin again. I think there's going to be a lot more demand than there is supply. So those people will be glad that I'm cashing out, not angry. They're not going to feel like they're being taken advantage. They're like dying for this stuff, and like not enough people are selling it. It's going to be the problem, not the other way around. So I mean, obviously the market's going to take care of that. The price is the manifestation of that. But I think like me, if it hits 200,000 and I'm selling it, that means there are buyers at 200,000, and I think there's going to be a lot of new buyers. Like only something like 10% of the world has owned crypto. Like there's a huge amount of people. There's a huge pool of folks who don't know anything about it, don't trust it, don't understand it, don't want it. And there's a whole other huge pool of folks who do one of those things, understand it, want it, but can't get it yet, but will be able to this time. So you put that all together, I'm pretty optimistic.
Okay. So if 2024 is the ETF
Yeah.
or ETFs, and if 2024 is the halving, why is 2025 the year that you're looking at where you're anticipating the biggest sort of medium term numbers in Bitcoin and in the crypto world?
Just based on the past. So the calendar has always worked off of the Bitcoin halving. And like I was saying, it hits a new all-time high 8 to 10 months after the halving, pretty much like clockwork. But that's just when it, crests the old all-time high. That's not its final number of all-time high. Like, so that means last time Bitcoin hit 21,000 or $20,100 or whatever in November 2020, right? And then it hit 70,000 in November 2021. The time before I don't remember this as clearly anymore because it's been a while, but Bitcoin hit its all-time high, I think around October, November, December, something like that, of 2016. I'm a little less clear on that because I remember 2017 so well. No, actually, it was in 2017 when it actually crested. It was like February 2017, it hit 1,300, and then it jumped, and it was not until December of 2017 that it hit 20,000. So like it takes that second year of wind up.
So from 1,300 to 20,000, the 20,000 was the following year for that massive acceleration. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so the last one that went up to 70,000 in that final year, what was the number that had gone up from? Did you say 50?
20.
From 20 to 70. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So just historically, there's a lot there. So my plan is if these prices don't go completely insane, to wait until, summer 2025 or so to start my sales out of this because I may miss out on some of the tippy tops, but I should be right in the throng of it all and doing pretty darn well. And if that means if the crash comes earlier than expected, I'll have hopefully already been getting out to some degree. If it comes later than expected or not at all, I'll have done very well. And that's why historically that year, 2025, the year after the halving year, is the monster year where everything comes together. So
Okay,
I don't
so
know that that's really going to happen again, but it seems crazy to bet against that without any other reason to, without any other evidence.
yeah, I think it's important that you said that, and so I just want to remind everybody who's listening that this is purely speculative, and that like legitimately, there's nothing cash flow wise, or there's no new technological development that's happened. It's just that there's an ETF and there's the halving, there's the stories around that. And so demand is going to go up, supply is going to go down of these, online, decentralized little nuggets.
Why?
Why is because, look, it looks like real estate is really overpriced right now in a lot of countries around the world, right? The US being one of them. And so it's a tough time to say, hey, put your hard earned money that you've built up, your nest egg that you've built up for an investment into real estate. It seems like, oh, that's pretty risky right now, given the valuations and how they stack up long term. And you could say the same thing about stocks, but probably less so than about real estate. But we've seen, that there's these great companies out there, whether it is like Netflix 2 years ago or Meta a year ago or NVIDIA anytime up until like the last couple months ago, where you can really make these great returns if you choose a good company to invest in that have real products, real earnings. And I know this is where you're going to you get a little bent because you're like, crypto is a real thing. And I want to say that, sure, it is a real thing, but it's very speculative relative to those other markets where you can also make great returns if you choose your investments at the right time.
You can't make the same kind of returns, though, unless you get super lucky in the stock market and happen to pick NVIDIA, right?
Yeah.
But so like you're almost never going to get the 10x or the 20x or the 30x in a year that you actually can get in crypto, at least historically, right? Like who knows what the future actually holds? I'm very optimistic about it. I'm not saying, by the way, I necessarily think Bitcoin's going to 10x from here soon, because that would be what, $400,000. I don't think we're getting a 400K Bitcoin by the end of 2025. I don't think it's impossible, but I'm certainly wouldn't count on that, and I'm not counting on that. But like, just to have the potential of that is something that you don't get in the stock market pretty much ever. Like you can get lucky and happen to stumble upon something, or the market might change and suddenly AI is hot and you happen to be in the right place at the right time and got in before it got hot. Like that's possible, sure. But this is a more predictable thing than that. So that's number one, son. Number two, you talk about these things as if they're not real at all. And like you like to talk about companies that produce cash, and you like that. And that's fair. Like that's reasonable. But two things. One is these things are not companies. They're different than companies, right? It's not a stock. You're buying into networks. It's a different thing. Number one. Number two, they actually do produce cash. They are cash flow positive, most of them, right? Like Ethereum, for every single transaction, charges its users money. And the users are forced to pay it to have Ethereum. And then that money gets paid out to Ethereum stakers. So like if you own Ethereum and you stake it, which is not hard to do, you get paid. I get paid every single day because I own Ethereum. It's great.
Okay. So just to wrap up, is there any flashing red warning signs off in the horizon that you think, ooh, this is something to be aware of if I'm wading into the crypto world?
I think there's two things. One is it's rare to find this many people in a demographic, in this case, crypto investors, all so sure about the same thing. And usually the public is not really good at being right about things. So when you get this many people feeling like we're going to have a big few years, that might be something to be slightly concerned about. I think that's a fair thing. Like now, because everyone understands the market cycles. That's number one. The only other big flashing thing would be that the Biden administration seems to continue to be somewhat at war with crypto. And we're going to find out more in the next 5 days how at war they really are, right? Um, if they don't approve this Bitcoin ETF, that feels like a bit of a shot across the bow that like, because if they approve it, it's sort of them saying like, all right, yes, we're going to regulate, yes, this, yes, that, but like, yeah, okay, you're legitimate. It's a real thing and it's fine. And that feels like a very legitimizing thing for this government who's been at war with crypto to a large degree, much more so than if any Republican president, Trump or anyone else, gets put in the office, like almost certainly they're going to be, or even RFK, who's currently the independent candidate, like he's very pro crypto. Like everyone else it feels very different about it than the Biden administration has. So that's the other possibility is the Biden administration continues to fight it. They win in 2024, and then they see that as a reason to continue to push even harder. I don't think it's going that way. I'm not talking about whether they win or not, but that they would really continue to push this hard. I think we're going to get a Bitcoin ETF approval probably in the next week, and if not, in the next 6 to 8 months. I don't really care when it happens. I don't need the price to move. I actually would like it to wait longer so I can acquire more stuff right now. But those are the only two obvious flashing red signals to me. As you from the outside are standing, peering in like, Tiny Tim looking at Ebenezer Scrooge eating a beautiful meal in a very fancy restaurant. You're out in the cold, the snow's coming down, you're on the outside of the glass. Is there anything that you see as flashing with red lights?
I like what you said about the consensus that exists in the crypto world that we're in for a big bull market, big price appreciation, and how often when there is consensus, it's wrong. And even just, I have spent a fair amount of time, one might say wasted a fair amount of time in the last 18 months, like following a number of macro investors and like respected economists and professors who, talk about what's happening in the world economy. And even with actually like, if you look at Goldman Sachs or if you look at Merrill Lynch or, a lot of the big trading houses, what their lead analyst guessed the S&P 500 would end the year with, most of them were so far off.
Yeah.
So the S&P is up 24% this year, or 2023 was up 24%. And almost none of them guessed that. They were dramatically off. The consensus was that it was going to be a flat year or just like a little minimal growth year. And obviously some people thought it was going to be a bear market, but very, very few said, no, if you put 100 grand into the stock market, I'm believing you're going to get an extra $24,000 out of it at the end of the year. So now what's the consensus for this upcoming year? And how much can you rely on it? The answer is you can't. You can't rely on it. And the truth is that in the crypto world, that is a big part of what a lot of people are betting on. It's a big part of what I'm betting on, actually. What we're talking about, like short-term price action. If Fidelity does open up the ETF, and and if I put some of my retirement savings into that, it's like I'm betting on this consensus. So that probably should be a bigger worry than it is. Should be something maybe to cause a little bit more of a pause than it is causing. That is the big thing. Yep.
I will say that the consensus is mostly just within the crypto community, though. Like if you go outside of the crypto community, there is not consensus about this. In fact, they're like Peter Schiff, the gold bug, was saying that the Bitcoin ETF is going to cause Bitcoin to go into a death spiral. It's literally his quote from yesterday. So lots of people in the financial world and the banking world are still predicting doom for Bitcoin and crypto and things like that. So it's not the world consensus. It's just the crypto consensus by people who are mainly holders, know the most about this, but also it's to our advantage to believe in this stuff, right? Like, of course we believe in it. We own it. Like if we didn't believe in it, we would have sold it. So there is that. So it balances out a little bit, but it's a little weird to have this many people feel this sure about it.
That's an excellent point about the outside world. And we've talked before about the comment sections in different newspapers and how it seems like the vast majority of people are like, this stuff is complete garbage and it's tulip mania. What's Peter Schiff's reasoning behind how the ETF could cause a price crash?
His reasoning is that no matter what's happened in the last 12 years, every single event in human history would cause the Bitcoin price to go down. If you follow anything he's ever written or said,
Yeah.
He's super anti-Bitcoin because his business is selling gold. Like he literally sells gold to people, and has so all he ever does is shill gold into like gold hit its all-time high a few weeks ago. But I mean, it's all-time high. Like literally in 2010, gold was like at 1,800, and it just hit like $2,100, right? In 2010, Bitcoin was like sub $1, and now it's at $44,000, right? And gold hit its all-time high, and Peter Schiff was tweeting about how much better than Bitcoin it was, and how much more money was made. Like as if like these things are reasonable. It's like he's almost become a caricature of himself, but I don't think he is. I think he actually. I don't know that he actually believes these things, but he sees it as his job to keep selling these things. You know, it's very weird. But no, I didn't go any further than reading what his reasoning was, because it doesn't matter. Everything is evidence that Bitcoin's going to go down for him. So it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
he writes
I'd be
from
curious
my
about
point
what
of
his
view.
reasoning is because it doesn't seem to make sense. And the other red flag would be regulation, which I don't know how likely that is, and I don't know how big of an impact it would have. But as we've spoken about before, the crypto market does seem to genuinely threaten the power and control that governments have over their currency, and over, like, let's say Russia, and how much money goes to Russia with the sanctions that are going on, or Venezuela, or all the things they do even to stop individual people from having the free ability to move their money from A to B without it being observed, so that it can so they can have surety that it's taxed. So I continue to be surprised that there aren't really stringent regulations around this stuff. And if there are, how much of an impact does that have on the price?
Mm. I mean, the U.S. government, but governments in general, I think ultimately see crypto as an opportunity. Maybe they haven't seen it that way yet. I think they will see it that way. Let me say it that way. Specifically, creating stable coins that they control and can surveil with ease, making that just part of everyday life, much the way we sort of turn cash into credit, and credit is easily tracked. And this would be a version of that, right? And so, but they have even more control over it. There won't be companies that are intervening. They would actually control every dollar directly and be able to surveil it directly. They wouldn't have to ask permission. They wouldn't have to deal with lawsuits. They wouldn't have to deal with anything, courts, blah, blah, blah. This is just the way it is. I think they're going to see it as a very exciting thing. I think they do. And I think that's ultimately where we're going with a lot of this stuff from the government point of view. And so that's why I think ultimately also we're going to see the Bitcoin ETFs get approved, be it now or in the near future. Because in the end, you got to put your arms around that to be able to sell this other idea, I think.
Do you
Maybe,
though?
maybe, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Even as I
You know,
say it,
I,
it doesn't sound right.
I would like to, in one of our future discussions, talk about how many times in world history private ownership of gold has been prohibited, and what's been the impact of that on the gold market, and how effective
Mm,
have they been with being able to fall through on that? Because obviously it'd be a lot harder to do that with crypto, but it is possible from a regulation point of view, because we've seen it historically where some government is in power of a major economy like the US, who says it's going to be illegal to hold Bitcoin as of January 1st. So
yeah,
exchange it now for our stable coins or whatever
right.
it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what FDR did with gold back in the day, right? 1930, I don't know what year, 39, I don't know, 29, I don't know. But he did exactly that. He forced every American to sell all their gold to the United States at reduced prices, mind you. And then once we had all the gold, jacked up the prices on gold because we were the market makers. It's pretty extraordinary that really happened, but it did. It like took advantage of all the citizens basically, and like basically robbed the citizens of some level of their wealth, right? Because they didn't even pay out a fair market price for the gold at the time. I am hopeful that is not going to happen again, but it is not impossible.
Yeah. But hey, it's not on the horizon for the next 6 to 18 to 24 months, as far
I
as we
don't think
know.
so.
So,
I don't think so. I mean, good luck getting any of that kind of stuff through right now in this political environment in the United States. By the way, like there's no chance you could get any part of Congress to agree to something like that, right? They would fight that tooth and nail. So
yeah.
that's one of the good parts about all this insane levels of gridlock and partisanship in the United States is it's very hard for them to pass anything that's really problematic. Uh, I like that. That's the only good thing.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Until next time. We'll see you then.
Fat cat out.
Skeptic out.